Welcome to Upticks. I'm Jake Falcon, the founder of Falcon Wealth Advisors and your host of Upticks. Today is episode 134, Wills and Trusts with Jason Salinardi. Jason, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks, Jake. It's good to be back.
I don't remember what episode you were on. I think it was like 50 maybe or 40. It's been a while.
Obviously things have changed because we were able to sit next to each other and have a conversation instead of via video, and lots changed since we did that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. It must have been obviously before 2020 then, because you're right. We were sitting right next to each other in our makeshift studio in our office, but here we are. And I hope that you and your family have been staying safe and healthy.
We have, we feel blessed. Luckily my kids have been in school and their sports have been going on, and everyone's stayed healthy. And so I know it's a difficult time, but you just kind of roll with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that. And we hope all of you out there tuning in are staying safe and healthy as well during this horrible pandemic. To introduce you a little bit, Jason, and correct me if I've got this botched, but I know you're a partner at Sandberg Phoenix here in Kansas City, and you've been practicing estate planning for over 15 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going on 17 years now.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's 2004.
Right. Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah. And I'm sure you have seen a lot of changes, and I've worked with a ton of attorneys in town, or I know a lot of attorneys, and you're one of the few that I've seen, and I'm sure there are plenty, but that truly specialize in wills and trusts. I mean, that is your core practice. You're not a litigator and also doing this on the side.
No. I don't. Yeah, I don't do litigation. I don't do securities work. I don't do divorces. I stay in my lane.
Yep.
Which is estates, trust, tax.
Got it. Yeah. So you're MU grad, right?
Yep. MU undergrad, grad, and my JD, and then I did my LM in tax at UMKC.
Awesome. And you played? Did you play college sports at MU?
I played college tennis my freshman and sophomore year at MU.
Nice. And do you still play tennis?
I do. I still enjoy it. The great local 10 cap league here in Kansas City. I do some USTA. So yeah, I try to stay as active. I'm kind of the old, wily veteran out there now. It's kind of scary.
Now Corey's gotten really into tennis. Have you guys ever played?
No. I've never done paddle tennis, and I know Corey loves paddle tennis and is always raving about it. I'll have to give him trouble. I think maybe he's afraid to put me on the court with him. But
he might be. Well, we need to get you guys set up. And we just hired a teammate, Joe Ibarra, who played tennis at Brockhurst College here in town. Okay. So maybe we can get the three of you guys. Not me. I won't be your fourth. But maybe we can get you guys out there. It'd be fun to see you guys play, though. I think he's pretty good.
I would love to. Yeah.
So, well, good. So for today's topic, I wanted to talk about wills and trusts on a high level, and then maybe get a little bit deeper for people that maybe already have a will or a trust. But one of the things that I find a little humorous in my initial conversations with potential new clients at Falcon Wealth Advisors, I look to ask all of them, and this is my question. I say, do you have a will or a trust? And the typical response I get back is either no or yes. And what's funny to me, and I know people can have both, but I try to frame the question because I think a lot of people don't understand that they are two different documents. So why don't you maybe explain, and you can pick which one first, but maybe explain to our audience, what is a will and what does it do? And what is a trust and what does it do?
Yeah. So I think it'll help to give a little context on a little higher level estate planning, which will then be able to help me differentiate between will and trust, right? So when I'm putting together a estate plan, I always have absolutely two primary goals. One being incapacity planning, right? So if somebody was incapacitated, and again, that's been a lot of that this year, think somebody on a ventilator, right?
Yeah.
So them appointing somebody to be able to make personal and financial decisions for them, as well as healthcare decisions. And then the other main goal is wealth transfer, is making sure that if they were, unfortunately something happened and they passed away, that their wealth is going exactly to who they want. And we get that transfer to their beneficiaries as efficiently as possible, which is keeping it out of the probate courts. So then when I'm looking at the tools I'm going to use to accomplish that, right? You've got doing nothing at all, which obviously is a bad idea.
Right.
Then you could go with a will or a trust. Because basically, really what a will is a wealth transfer tool, right? Because what a
Okay.
will says is, hey, if I die and I've got my wealth here, here's where I want it to go. Okay. Then a trust does the same thing, right? A trust can provide that, here's if something happens to me, here's where everything wants to go. Now, one major difference between a will versus a trust, anything that happens with a will has to go through the probate courts for that transfer to be accomplished, which we want to avoid probate for a number of reasons. One, it's costly, right? You're going to have to hire attorneys like me, which, we don't work for free. So there's expense there. It's a very time consuming process. It doesn't matter whether you're on the Kansas side or Missouri side or really anywhere. It's a very time consuming process.
What does that time look like typically on average?
If it's a small estate, it could be done relatively quickly, month or so. If it's a large estate in Kansas and Missouri is anything over 40,000. So again, we're not talking. So
right.
Then you're looking at least a year. I mean, around a year.
Okay.
Kansas can be a little bit quicker than Missouri just because of the statutes, but it's going to be a minimum of 6 months. I could promise that.
Okay.
The other big difference between a will and a trust is with a trust is I could build in incapacity planning where I can't with a will. A will only becomes effective upon death. With the trust, I could state that, hey, I'm in charge of all my stuff, all my money. But if I'm incapacitated, I want my wife to be able to, pay my bills, make sure the kids' school's paid for, all that kind of stuff. Or if neither of us could, my brother or my mom or whoever that is.
So is that a power of attorney? Is that what that is?
Well, so power of attorney, yeah. So there's powers of attorney for both financial and healthcare. But we could also have that stuff in the trust. Let me give you an example of like if you looked up, I live in Johnson County, looked at the records of Johnson County. My house is owned by the Salinardi family trust, right? And my wife and I are the trustees. So that means we could, sell it, refinance it, do whatever we want. But let's say we both unfortunately got COVID and we're on ventilators and all of a sudden, they need to refinance the mortgage or something. The people that I've appointed as successor trustees, they could handle that for us now, right?
Got it.
Now, let me give you another example. Let's say, same situation. We're both on ventilators, and our successor I need somebody to access my 401k or my IRAs to pull money out because the kids need things. Well, then pursuant to the durable power of attorneys, they could do that, right?
But if you had a will, if you had a will, could you get another power of attorney as another document or no?
Yeah. So generally, in almost all times, right, there's always called 5 documents as part of this estate plan: trust, last will and testaments, durable power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and living will. Right. And just a living will is my statement of guidance to my loved ones that basically saying, if I'm in an end of life situation, I'm, in a coma with no hope of recovery or anything like that, I'm trying to give them guidance what I would want done, right? To try to make a very horrible decision as easy as possible. The other big advantage of the trust is that you could build in a lot of control over what happens to the money, right? Mm-hmm. For example, like I've got 3 minor children at home, right? So if something happened to my wife and I need somebody to be in charge of not only them, but of the money. And I also want to make sure that my kids the money doesn't get into their hands at 18 or 20 or 22 for that matter. Cause I always look inward, right? I know of as a young 22-year-old, if I was handed a bunch of money, I promise you I wouldn't have it today.
Right. So a will doesn't prevent any of that, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you can build a lot of that in the will, but it's just so inefficient because it has to go through the probate court. And if I do it that way, I'm going to have court involvement all the time.
Got it. So should anybody even have a will? So are you suggesting then maybe, because a lot of people will say, well, Jake, I don't have $15 million, so I don't need a trust. So are you suggesting though, like, is there any circumstance where just having a will, in your opinion, is sufficient? Because it sounds very restrictive and timely. And
if there's a situation where, I'll use my mom as an example, right? She's, in her mid 70s. There's my brother and I, she's doing great, but there's not a ton. And, I know I'm a very responsible person. My brother, yeah, he's responsible. But the point is, so I don't have a trust for her. I didn't put a trust in place for her because there's not a ton of assets and right. But the will is still a backup plan, right? Because the assets that she does have are either beneficiary designated or transfer on death designated to my brother and I.
Got it.
So I always use a will as a safety plan, as like plan B, and use either a trust or making sure everything is designated to where the client wants it to go. That way, again, I'm keeping everything out of probate.
Got it. Makes good sense. So, and that's the problem. I think most people, they don't designate everything, right? I'm sure you've done a good job with your mom making sure of that, but a lot of people don't list beneficiaries on all their stuff. Or you buy a new car and you don't have it on there.
Right. And a lot of people I don't think are aware that you can even do that, because there's not an asset out there that you can't somehow add a designation to, right? You could add transfer on death designations to vehicles. You could do transfer on death deeds on real estate. Obviously, life insurance is beneficiary designations, IRAs and 401ks all have beneficiary designations. You could add payable on death designations to your bank accounts.
Right.
So everything can be done. Part of that planning then becomes in, what's your circumstances, right? I'm a dad of 3 minor kids, so I can't just designate it directly to them. They're not old enough or mature enough yet.
Right. So that's what the trust will help. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. And that's where the trust becomes important. I mean, to me, if you've got minor children or young adult children or special needs children, or again, there is a lot of wealth to protect, you're going to you should have a trust.
Got it. So that makes a lot of sense. So these 5 documents are part of the process that you take your clients through and making sure that's all ironclad. And then, so let's say, okay, clients watching this or listening to this, and they already have a trust. How often do you think they should update it or review it?
My rule of thumb, every 3 years, unless again, if something in life happens that you should review it, there's a birth of a child or death in the family, or, you move states, things like that, you shouldn't wait. And then obviously, I'll reach out to clients if there's a significant law change, which there hasn't been a ton, a couple years ago, which I know you've covered plenty of times in your show, about the Secure Act, right? There were some things because of that with certain clients we needed to address in their documents because of that. And that's where, I'm reaching out to some, hey, we need to talk, even though it hasn't been 3 years. But if not, I think it's a good idea to review it every 3 years. It's, it's maintenance, right? It's like, if you do the everyday little things on your car or house, right? You avoid the big problems, right? Same thing with that. If you just keep it up to date little by little, you avoid having to do complete redos, right? Which over time will save on fees, right? Because I do this planning always on a flat fee, right? Always based upon the scope of services. So if I have to do little things and small fees, I got to do big things, big fees, unfortunately.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's very similar to how we operate is, we like to review a financial plan a couple times a year, at least once a year, just to see what's changed. So that makes good sense. So yeah, on a trust or reviewing that every 3 years makes a lot of sense. Maybe a quick, because you got me thinking a little bit with the Secure Act and some of the changes, the new inherited IRA rules where they have to be emptied in 10 years. Have you guys done anything with trusts around that or have any thought, or maybe that's maybe a little out of your realm? I'm just curious.
Well, no, I mean, it depends on, a lot of that depends upon the situation of the client, right? Like, again, I got minor kids, right? So my kids can still use the old rules until at least they're 18, and then it's 10 years.
Right.
So that may affect how I do my beneficiary designations versus somebody that's got adult children. They're going to have to take it over 10 years. So it becomes more of are they more worried about protection? Or are they okay with it just going out to the kids directly?
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think you definitely have to look at that case by case and see what you're looking to accomplish and what the rule is.
Right. So, and again, obviously taxes always play, especially when we're talking about retirement accounts like that, because of the tax deferral, it complicates that conversation. That's why you got to look at everyone's situation as they are.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. Now with Biden in the White House and the Democrats in the Senate, we're looking at probably taxes going up. Is there anything on your radar with estate taxes and potentially that number changing, or is it too early to tell?
Well, there's a lot of chatter that, or there's a lot of, I think, expectation that the current administration will reduce the estate tax exemption amount. So the estate tax exemption amount is there's a certain amount that can go to your beneficiaries estate tax free. And right now, as we're talking, that exemption amount is 11.7 million, and that's per person. So for a husband and wife, you're talking 23 plus million.
Right.
There's a lot of expectation that that number is going to be reduced when the current administration, introduces some tax reform. And I've heard I've read things from, down to 3.5 million to 5 million to maybe they don't touch. I mean, it's too early to tell. And, you could, go down a rabbit hole, Google search, and what's going to happen.
Right. And you've seen it. I mean, in your 17 career, haven't you seen it as low as like $1 million? How low is it?
I mean, when I started law school, right, which was 2000, it was 625 or 675,000.
Wow.
Then the Bush tax cuts came into play in 01, and it started ramping up, up to 3.5 million. Then we had 2010, there was no estate tax. 2011, we were waiting for Congress to act. And then 2012, we got 5 million. And then 2018, we went to 10 million. And so
it's crazy.
It's all over the board.
Yeah. Yeah. So when that happens, that's when you need to come back into the picture, and we need to make sure that things are titled correctly, or if we need to move assets around in different trusts or start gifting earlier, right? That's when all those things play out.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, obviously, as it keeps going up, it's, a good thing for people, because it's like, well, it's getting more and more out of reach. So it's a good thing. But yeah, if all of a sudden it drops significantly, that's definitely going to be requires, a lot of people to revisit and say, now am I looking at an estate tax issue? Because the current estate tax rate is 40%.
Right. That's crazy. Yeah. So 40% of, so if you're over that $23 million threshold, so it's every dollar over that gets taxed at 40% on a federal level, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the good thing is I know you've got clients all over, but Missouri and Kansas, there's no estate taxes at the state level in Kansas or Missouri.
Right. Right. But other states do.
Stuff in Illinois, and Illinois has a state level estate tax that comes in at 4 million.
Gotcha. Wow. Makes it even more complicated. Interesting.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Did I miss anything else? Maybe maybe a hint or a tip that you wanted to give our audience, maybe when they're looking at their estate plan?
I think the tip to think about is for a lot, because I have a lot of clients where they have adult children that are responsible, upstanding citizens, and they have no concerns about them, is that we can use the planning to provide a lot of protection for our children from things that we hope our kids never have to deal with, but you just can't predict. Divorce, a bankruptcy, a creditor issue. So there's a lot of what I call beneficiary protection that you could build into a trust for the kids for things that, again, you just never know.
Right. I think that's huge.
Don't forget about that aspect of the planning as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I think that's huge, because you're right. I mean, you can trust your children, but you never know what's going to happen. If something happens to you 30, 40 years, and that trust can prevent all of, from a divorce or getting, creditor or going bankrupt. And so that's good. That's good advice. Yeah. So thank you. So I know that's all the time that we do have this morning. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining us. Certainly, if you want Jason's contact info, you can reach out to me directly. We can't officially, compliance doesn't like me to endorse anybody on the show, but I've known Jason for a number of years, and thank you again for joining us. I hope you stay safe and healthy. We're recording this on a Friday. Do you have any plans for the weekend?
You know what? The weather's going to be nice. I've got a soccer game for my oldest tonight, basketball tomorrow, and then another soccer game for him on Sunday.
Awesome.
Actually, three games is a light weekend. So, but it's great. I love that they're, able to do all this and in light of everything. Yeah.
Spring is, coming out in the air in Kansas City. And then obviously the COVID numbers, I feel like, are getting better all the time. So, hopefully the vaccine keeps filtering its way through the population, and people stay safe and healthy out there.
Yeah. You too. And thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Jason. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right. Bye.